I'm gonna go ahead and ruffle some feathers here. Today I want to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly behind all of this euphoria and excitement that Benito, Bad Bunny, has brought us. I want to talk to it as an American in the full sense of the word, an American that has lived in both the north part of the continent and the south. Hi, my name is Rebecca. I was born and raised in New York City by Colombian parents. I have been living in Medellin since 2018, and I'm currently doing tours here. But let's get started. One of the greatest examples that Benito has shown us recently is that it is not necessary for Latin American artists to tour on the mainland of the United States in order to be successful. Of course, it's easier for him as a superstar to do this and to pull this power move, but he showed us that it's possible. I do think that the United States will continue to be an attractive venue for Latin American artists. I mean, after all, there are 70 million Latin American people living on the mainland of the United States. But there are also approximately 670 million people living in Latin America and the Caribbean. And dare I say that after the pandemic, the social and economic conditions in Latin America have changed drastically. Every day, more and more people living in developed countries are searching for an alternate lifestyle. And Latin America is definitely the place where a lot of people are placing their eyes in. The ability of remote work has definitely broadened the opportunities for people living in Latin America. So the purchasing power isn't what it once was. I hadn't watched an award show in years. I think that I felt a big disconnect with the awards because the way that I was consuming music definitely changed. I went digital, so I wasn't depending on these broadcasting networks or radio stations to get my music anymore. My choices didn't trigger the algorithm to show me new artists like Lola Young or Sabrina Carpenter or the Marias. But because of what I was listening to, the algorithm continued to show me Bad Bunny, it continued to show me Rosalia and Marc Anthony, for example. I was initially shocked when Benito won Album of the Year, I'm not going to lie. My initial prediction went to Lady Gaga and Mayhem. But then when I began to watch the awards, I saw that Trevor Noah was approaching him a little bit too much. He was getting a lot of camera time. The place where he was seated was like front row. And I started to get the inkling like, oh, he is definitely going to win Album of the Year. So after analyzing the entire situation, Benito winning Album of the Year makes complete sense. So Grammys are awarded based on the votes cast by 15,000 voting members of the Recording Academy. And the rule is that the voting members must reside in the United States. But from what I hear from the CEO, Harvey Mason Jr., I think that that's going to change in the future. And I'm really curious about the changes that are coming into the voting for the Grammys for the following years. But what very few people know is that the Recording Academy had recently welcomed 3,800 new voting members. And that number includes all voting members from the Latin Grammys. And now within that new voting class, and I'm going to read this because I haven't memorized it, 50% are 39 or younger, 58% are people of color, and 35% identified as women. Needless to say, it was a big win for Latin American music, and it was necessary given the current climate in the United States. And this goes for the Super Bowl as well. Now, that being said, here comes the ugly part that I was talking to you guys about earlier. The Super Bowl halftime show has always been a platform for activism. People who say what we want to hear are always placed on pedestals. That's why a lot of social movements are always associated with people that have a big voice or a big platform. But the minute they don't meet our expectations, we are quick to kick them off, chew them up, and spit them out. We love to make heroes and villains. We love to cry when they shatter our dreams and show us that they are human. In the last song of the album, Debí tirar más fotos, La Mudanza, Benito is telling us a story, and I want to read that story to you. Benito, hijo de Benito, le decían Tito, el mayor de seis, trabajando desde chamaquito, guiando camiones como el pa y el abuelo, aunque su sueño siempre fue ser ingeniero. Un día, Toñito lo invitó para hacer una mudanza, para buscarse alguito. De pesos pa algo alcanza. Gracias a Dios que ese día no estaba bici, porque en la mudanza fue donde conoció a Lizzy, la menor de 3 que se criaron con doña Juanita, porque su mamá y papá partieron estando chiquita. Prometió guardarse antes de casarse y lo cumplió. Diciembre del 92 con Tito se casó, antes de irse para Almirante, donde se conocieron. Vivieron en Morovis, en donde hicieron al nene, que en Bayamón por primera vez vieron. Un aplauso pa mami y papi, porque en verdad rompieron. That's a lot of our story. You know, I think there he's telling us, look, I'm a human being. And then he continues in that same song, está peligroso. Si mañana muero, yo espero que nunca olviden mi rostro y pongan un tema mío el día que traigan a hostos. En la caja, la bandera azul clarito y recuerde que siempre fui yo, siempre fui Benito. You know, let's not forget about how much we vilified and antagonized him 2 or 3 years ago when he chucked that woman's phone away because she was all up in his face. But let's not get confused here. Benito is in this for himself. Yes, there is a situation going on right now, and he has a platform and he has a big voice to express his dissent, which is great. But Bad Bunny is a product. Have you guys checked out the credits to these songs? The song that I just read to you, La Mudanza, is 3 minutes and 30 seconds long. There are 5 writers to that song. There's another one on that album, La Verdad. That song is 3 minutes and 50 seconds, and there are 16 writers on there. Benito has an arsenal of talent at his disposal. He has talented musicians, composers, instrumentalists, and marketing geniuses that probably know more about us than we know about ourselves. And that's the first point that I want to make here. Secondly, we can't ignore that Benito is a white Puerto Rican, which basically makes him a white American because Puerto Rico is part of America, if that hasn't been made clear yet. And he's claimed his fame and fortune making black-rooted music. Out of all of the reggaeton artists that have reached superstardom, none of them have been black. Now, before you all come out at me, I'm not trying to vilify Bad Bunny. I know that Bad Bunny has mixtapes where he champions Black Lives Matter movement, but he is still following a very traditional whitewash trajectory. I think it's something that we have to analyze and discuss before we go ahead and blame systemic racism on him. The other day I was thinking about J Balvin and Bad Bunny, you know, and all of this reconciliation movement and everybody's happy and blah, 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 blah. I think that Latin Americans that grew up and were raised in their countries have a very different relationship with identity than those that have either immigrated at a very young age or who were born abroad. And I'm going to give examples here. People that were born, raised, and continue to live in Colombia obviously know that they are Colombians, but being Colombian is not the first thing that they identify with because everyone is Colombian. It's the default. It's like no one in the world goes ahead and introduces themselves as, hi, I'm so-and-so, I'm human, nice to meet you. Like, duh, you're human. Colombians that live in Colombia identify themselves primarily by region, paisa, rolo, costeño, by race, by class, or by political party. But when Colombians or other Latin Americans immigrate to the United States or Europe, they fall into the Latino community. And then within that Latino community, they identify themselves by nationality because it is the first obvious distinguisher between everybody in the community. It's what sets us apart. And subsequent generations keep following these patterns. Even though they were born in the US, they keep identifying themselves with their family's country of origin. Now, J Balvin is a white Colombian who was brought up in an upper class family in Medellin. I have never spoken to him, but I am willing to bet that J Balvin first identified himself by class here in Colombia. He was un gomelo. For those of you who don't know, gomelo is the word that we use to address young people from upper class families. He probably didn't begin to identify himself as Colombian until he began touring. J Balvin, the Colombian reggaeton artist. And he didn't begin to use the ad-lib Latino gang until 2018, 2019, when he completely moved to the United States. His relationship with identity completely changed. J Balvin went from being a gomelo from Medellin to a Latino to the world. And in that change of relationship with himself and how he perceived himself and how the world perceived him, a lot of ugly things came out. During the George Floyd protest in 2020, J Balvin kept on tweeting "Every lives matter" and "Latinos lives matter too." Like, how tone deaf. He later sent a message saying, "After taking time to speak to those close to me, I am educating myself on the deep significance and horrifying history that is the root of the Black Lives Matter movement." Okay, but then he continued to do some crazy wild things, like releasing a music video with 2 black girls on leashes. And then he received the Afro-Latino Artist of the Year award by the African Entertainment Awards USA. Guys, I'm not making this up. this really happened. And then, as if things couldn't get any worse, he goes on to say, I'm so misunderstood about this. I'm not Afro-Latina, but I have accepted this award for my contributions to the genre thanks to my collaborations with Afro-Latin artists. A white artist claiming fame and profiting off of music created by Black artists. Where have I heard this before? I don't know, but I really do hope that J Balvin has learned a thing or two about the discrimination and the prejudice against the Black community. And I use J Balvin here not because I want to vilify him, not because I want to accuse him as a racist, but because he is a reflection of the anti-Blackness that resides in the Latino community. Even if he doesn't consciously hate Black people, his actions reveal how normalized prejudice is in the Latino community. And I think that as Latinos, we have a really hard time accepting this, accepting the fact that we have racist and anti-Black tendencies, and we're constantly acting them out. Now, let's talk about Benito. Benito, like I mentioned before, for all intents and purposes, is a white American. But Benito was born and raised into a lower middle class family in Bayamon. He grew up inside the US racial politics. Benito grew up identifying himself first as a Puerto Rican and as a Latino. He grew up in an environment that forced him to have conversations about race, class, and power. But you won't ever see Benito stumbling like J Balvin did. J Balvin, and it pains me to say it, comes from a place where racism is alive and well, but it lives quietly. You know, it's tucked in and we hide it through mestizaje and saying that we're all mixed, and we're not having a real conversation about it. But let's make something clear here. They're both artists that are profiting from a system that censors whiteness and marginalizes the Black creator. Look, I've removed myself from the dynamics of American identity politics and the way that I see it. American culture, it's not white, it's not Black, it's not Latino, it's not Asian, it's not indigenous. American culture is work. Work and consumption. US culture is about the grind, it's about the hustle, it's about the entrepreneur, it's about the startup. It's about everything, everywhere, all at once. It's about the discounts, Black Friday, iPhones, Teslas, McDonald's, Shake Shack, Taylor Swift, Kendrick Lamar, and Bad Bunny. The labor that powered United States' initial success was Black, and it continues to be sustained by immigrants. Look, I know that there's many different ways to look at the situation. I'm just presenting one point of view. The United States wants to so badly define its culture like other countries do. It can't, because its identity was never focused on the people or the culture. It was focused on production, to produce and to profit a certain group of people that want to assert and impose themselves. And we're all out here fighting for our lives, for recognition, for our rights, for dignity, for respect. We want an acknowledgement. We want a dignified human acknowledgement of the contributions that we have made to what some people think is the greatest country in the world. And now all of this while Bad Bunny will be performing at the halftime Super Bowl show in the middle of a fundamentally American sport. Football. It is literally called the American sport. It's a sport where 70% of the participating athletes identify as Black. It's a game with deep racial history. And it's also a game that we as Latinos want to make part of. I see a lot of Colombians posting reels and information about the Patriots cornerback Christian Gonzalez. And I think representation is important, and I'm very proud, not entirely because he's on the wrong team, but I'm proud also that there are Latinos playing football, American football. But are we really acknowledging American history, or are we just really excited to make part of the machine? Because being visible inside a system is not the same as changing it. I mean, I don't know. And with that, I am going to log off. I hope everybody enjoys the Super Bowl. I am certainly going to be rooting for the Seahawks. Can't, as a Giants fan, root for the Patriots and Christian Gonzalez. Sorry, but let me know what you guys think in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next one.